Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along to our session this afternoon. For those people who are joining live, welcome. We know this is a tricky time straight after school, so we're grateful that you're able to make time for today and really hoping that it's going to be useful for you and your teams. For those watching on replay, hopefully you're settled back in a chair comfortably somewhere and can listen in and maybe take some notes. My name is Reid Smith. I'm from Ochre Education, and I'm so pleased to be able to give you a walkthrough and introduction to the Ochre curriculum materials that are aligned to the New South Wales syllabus. This is the second in a number of webinars that we're presenting on these materials. The first was presented by the amazing Sue Davis earlier on this year around mathematics, and we'll also be spending some time later on this year talking about HSIE, science and technology, and English materials that are specific to the New South Wales syllabus. So you've got a bit of an idea about each of those different subject areas. Today's session is primarily focused on giving you an overview of what's currently available, some of the key ideas and themes that underpin each of the subject areas that we've created materials for, as well as some specific detail for each of those courses. So really it's meant to be an intro to the materials. It's not meant to be comprehensive in just the 45 minutes that we have available to us today. Before I get too deeply into the session itself, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands upon which we all meet today and pay our respects to their elders past and present. And on behalf of Ochre Education, I'd like to welcome any First Nations people here today. I join you from Patilla, which is just north of Ballarat in country Victoria, on the lands of the Wadawurrung people. Where I'm sitting, it's pretty close to the mouth of Yarrawee Creek, a creek that nourishes the lands to the south of this big town of Ballarat. So I'm really pleased to welcome you. Please, if you'd like, you can pop into the chat where you're joining us from today. And also, I'd like to welcome Sue to our call today. Sue's going to be answering questions that might come through the chat. So if something comes up, something that you're thinking about and wondering about in relation to the Ochre materials for the New South Wales syllabus, please don't hesitate to pop it into the chat and Sue will answer. So our starting point really is around this idea of instructional materials. Why do we have instructional materials? We create instructional materials here at Ochre Education for two reasons. The first one is we recognise that teaching expertise sits primarily within schools and within teachers that are teaching in schools. So we work with practicing teachers all over the country to create materials to share more broadly with other schools and other people. And really our aim is to provide equitable access to the expertise that sits within schools, whether that school happens to be in a large school in Sydney or in a very, very small school in very rural New South Wales. We know that there's expertise that sits in each of those schools, so how can we share that from one place to another? The second reason we create instructional materials is because we know that they're strongly linked to improved student outcomes and also greater equity of opportunity for students. So we know that they support consistent curriculum delivery, they build knowledge for students over time, and they enable sustained improvement, even when you've got staff turnover. So one of the great things about having a consistent and coherent set of instructional materials is that if you've got teachers moving in and out of the school, there's a consistent backbone that can help support teacher teams, even when key members of the team are no longer there. So we're committed to creating instructional materials. We're committed to having practicing teachers create those materials, and we're committed to making those materials available to schools across Australia for free, and that'll be the case forever. So the materials that we've made up until this point are free for you to download and use, and they will be for as long as Ochre Education is in existence, which should be for a very long time. In terms of the New South Wales syllabus aligned materials, obviously the starting point for our work is that they're aligned with the new South Wales syllabus documents, some of those that you've been teaching with for several years now, and some of those for other subject areas that you're starting to teach, and I'm sure to plan for teaching for next year. These materials are designed to support teachers and students. They're meant to provide a range of different activities, that they're not just slide decks where you start on slide 1 and end on slide 72, but rather they're designed to hold the experience and expertise of teachers and share it with you. And so we know that they often involve hands-on activities, different ways of students working together in small groups, whole class, and individually. We provide assessment tools that match the New South Wales syllabus standards, and we believe these materials help build strong foundational skills for students from the early stage 1 through to stage 5. And what we're really trying to do with these materials is to offer clear guidance for teachers, not so that the teachers who've worked on these materials can tell you what to do, but rather they're sharing their thinking. What is it that they would do at particular spots in a lesson? How is it that they've organised content and ideas within a lesson, but also over units and over multiple years? And we're trying to supply them in a way that's both ready to use so that you can pick up and use them, but also in a format that you can edit and adapt for your particular context. And we've been working hard on creating these materials for you. So if you're wondering about what syllabus materials are going to be available for teaching in 2027, I've put together a quick overview here. For English, for all of primary, early stage 1 through to stage 3, as well as stage 4, so that's year 7 and year 8, you will have syllabus materials that are available for teaching in 2027 for the entire year. So for every lesson on the syllabus, you will have a lesson that you can use. In mathematics, we're finalising the last term of materials for early stage 1 to stage 3 mathematics now. They'll be available soon, and that will complete our set of mathematics. In science and technology, particularly in the science area, we have materials that are going to be available for you in early stage 1 through to stage 4. And in HSIE, we've released the last of our materials from early stage 1 through to stage 3. Just noting that we'll be creating some further materials. So those boxes that are in orange, so that's stage 5 English and science, and also stage 4 history and geography, you will find some curriculum and lesson level materials being made available for you and your teams to use in time for teaching in 2027, but they won't be all available now. So if you pop into the website for those orange boxes, you will find some lessons available, but not all of them will be available by the end of the year, but they'll be made progressively available over the course of 2027 in time for you to teach them next year. So we've got a large group of teachers who are working on those materials at the moment, over 100 at this stage, who are furiously yet happily creating lessons to share with you. In terms of the materials themselves, we tend to divide the resources into 2 broad buckets. So the first of those buckets are the curriculum level resources. Those particular resources are designed to be teacher facing, and they are giving information about how the curriculum has been written and structured, and moves from levels of detail from the yearly overview, which is like a yearly planner, through to a unit overview, which gives information about each of the units, down to a scope and sequence document that details lesson by lesson how the teachers that we've worked with have scheduled the skills and knowledge, and that's represented in the syllabus. And then we've got some unit plans and also assessments that fit in that curriculum resources bucket. In addition to that, we have our lesson resources that are all available for you to download and adapt to your particular context. So in the lesson resources, we have daily reviews or do nows, depending on the subject and the phase of school that you're working in. We have some lessons or sequence slides that you can use in your class. We've got some worksheets and booklets, which are learning activities that you can use with your students, either electronically or on paper. And then for a lot of subject areas, we have some reteach materials, really short versions of the lesson materials that you can use to review and rehearse knowledge and skills that your students just need a 10-minute practice and reteach on. So there's a lot of different material that's available for you and your team to use. As I said at the start of this session today, we'll be providing some webinars for each of the different subject areas that I'm going to be covering today that go into greater depth what the curriculum resources are for each of the subjects, as well as what the lesson resources are for each of the subjects and how you can access them on our website. As I said before, and I've emphasized, I think, quite frequently during the session, they're all available to you for free, so you can make your own copies. In saying this, we want to recognise that although we provide these high quality curriculum materials and lesson resources, they don't teach students in the absence of a teacher. So we greatly value the role of teachers both in the creation of the materials that are aligned to the New South Wales syllabus, but also in the teaching. So we know that the materials that we create are tools that highly expert and experienced teachers will use in their classroom and adapt for their particular context. So we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here, that these materials are there as a support and as a tool rather than as a replacement. And really, the ways that teachers have used their expertise in using these materials greatly vary. We know that teachers bring their own flair and ideas about how they might explain particular concepts. We know teachers are illustrating connections and historical importance of particular pieces of knowledge. We know that teachers bring this knowledge of their students and their classes and the communities in which they teach to be able to make adaptations and connections that can't possibly done from a teacher who's teaching in a very different school or is trying to write some materials that might work for students in a variety of contexts. We know teachers model key subject-specific and cross-subject skills. Teachers make judgments about the content of lessons, whether that's suitable for their students at a particular time, whether they need more scaffolding and support at any particular moment, whether some extension might be really suitable for them. We know that teachers make judgment about that all the time, and of course, making reference back to the outcome statements, content groups and content points from the syllabus, making sure their students have the opportunity to access the syllabus. And then the final thing is teachers bring the joy and love for the subject. There's no substitute for a teacher who feels like they really know their stuff, enthusiastic about what they're teaching and really getting into it. It's one of the great joys, and we think that the materials that we've created in association with teachers is really going to help support you as teachers and as school leaders to be able to bring that joy and love for the subject into your classrooms every day. And related to that, we talk often about this concept of intellectual preparation. So intellectual preparation, it's the process of considering shared lesson materials of any type and thinking about how your students will engage with them. So really, we're bringing those two funds of knowledge together. So knowledge of pedagogy, knowledge of the content, along with your knowledge of the students that you're working with at any particular time. And we're bringing those two elements together so that you've got materials that are crafted for your particular students. So during your intellectual preparation, either as teams, and probably both as teams and as individuals, it's really considering the concepts that are being developed in the lesson and the teaching techniques that are going to be used to develop those concepts, those ideas and concepts that are represented within the lesson materials, and you're thinking about how your students, your classes and your school community are going to engage with the materials that are being created by Ochre Education teachers. So this intellectual preparation we think is key. So how to take those materials and fit it for purpose in your particular context. One of the underpinning ideas of the Ochre resources, and obviously linked to this New South Wales syllabus purpose as well, is that we create coherent knowledge-rich curriculum. So what we're trying to do is to create a curriculum that's designed to support strong teaching, meaningful student learning. So we're thinking carefully about what students should learn each year and how that builds from one year to another. One of the great things, the great privileges we have as teachers and school leaders is we have students in our care for sometimes 13 or 14 years, and we're stewarding them through learning these increasingly complex skills and knowledges. And so as we've been thinking about how this Ochre curriculum might work, we've been thinking about how we build that knowledge and skill over time in a way that's going to be really coherent, so that all parts of the curriculum speak to one another. And we've thought carefully about how increasingly complex ideas and skills are being built up from one year to the next. So this coherent, knowledge-rich curriculum is something that's really important to us. We want our students in all of our schools to be learning more about the world in which they live. So we want them to know more about the history of our world, our societies, past, present, and future. We want them to know how the societies engage with one another at the moment, the way that our environment works and what our responsibilities are for it. We want our students to engage with rich literature. We want them to know how the world works in terms of scientific concepts. We want them to know a lot of stuff. We want them to be people who have this access to all of the magnificent knowledge and skills that we as a human race have developed over time. And so we're really thinking carefully about the opportunities that we provide as teachers at Ochre Education, but in conjunction with you as schools and school leaders, how we can provide our students with the opportunity to learn more about their world and maybe open up opportunities for them beyond school. In terms of our learning sequences, they are explicitly aligned with the New South Wales syllabus. We make sure that we have full coverage of syllabus outcomes, content groups, and content points. We provide some mapping documents that show where each of those content groups and content points are addressed in each of our units across multiple stages. We provide clear connections across content groups, as well as those logical progression of knowledge and skills. We know that's a real feature of the New South Wales syllabus, and we think it's strongly represented within the Ochre curriculum materials. And really what we're trying to do with our curriculum across all of the subject areas I'll be talking about tonight is the development of that deep knowledge and deep conceptual understanding. So we're emphasizing depth of content. We've thought carefully about the sequencing. We're always thinking about how we support our students to develop tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary so they can build up their lexicon, and also how we can support them to make clear conceptual connections within subject areas, but also between different subject areas. The materials are based on the research evidence about the most effective ways to teach literacy, numeracy, science, and humanities. It's in line with the Aero teaching and learning model and the New South Wales Department's explicit teaching strategies. It's worth pausing for a moment just to acknowledge that whenever we're thinking about particular subject areas like English and science and mathematics, that they're not all the same thing. So the teachers who've contributed to these materials have thought carefully about what does explicit teaching look like in the context of mathematics as compared to how it might look in the context of science. And so you'll see differences in materials and how things are represented in different subjects. So hopefully you'll see some of that nuance and ideas. We're not trying to flatten the things that make subject areas so unique, but rather bring them to the fore with a consistent and evidence-based approach. So we're really thinking about that gradual release of responsibility through explicit instruction. We've considered what we know from cognitive science, and although our starting point is often through the explicit teaching of skills and knowledge, we're really aiming to build our students into inquiry-based learning or problem solving based on this fund of knowledge and skills that they've built up over time. It's no use us as a community of teachers supporting students to build a Ferrari in the garage if they never take it out for a spin. So these open-ended opportunities, problem solving and inquiry-based elements are really important. So once our students have the requisite knowledge and skills, then we're really keen for them to try out and mobilize those skills in a less structured format. We've considered the elements of cognitive load theory. I've just ironically popped a GIF in the corner of my screen here. And we've thought carefully about the design principles that underpin all of our materials, so that what are the ways in which we can help focus student attention? How can we structure our explanations in a way that things clear for both teachers and students, and help maximise the opportunity that they have to learn. So I've talked a little bit about the key design principles. We're thinking about that logical sequencing. We want to make sure that we've got a depth of content to provide comprehensive coverage. We've got strong tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary is integrated through all of our lessons across all of our subject areas. We know that vocabulary is one of the keys to unlocking further learning and self-teaching, and so there's a strong focus on vocab. And also, we know that fluency in knowledge is really important. We develop that alongside our clear conceptual connections. Where we can, we provide models and worked examples that provide step-by-step guidance for new concepts. That's primarily for students, but we know for those teachers who are teaching in areas that they're less confident about, they provide a model for what good high quality work might look like from students. And we're gradually trying to shift that responsibility for learning from the teacher to the students within each lesson. So we're really thinking carefully about how our students are involved. And through all of this, our basis really sits in whole class instruction. So you'll find that the materials that have been created as part of this project, they often feature whole class introductions and workings. What we're trying to do is to increase the amount of time that teachers and students are working together. And it means that when our students are all learning together, then it means that all students have the opportunity to access grade and stage level content, right? So you don't have these times where if we're splitting our students up into much smaller groups, that they may not have access to some of that the stage-related knowledge and skills that we know that they should at least have the opportunity to learn. But combined within this, we know that it's not just a chalk and talk where a teacher is talking at their class for a period of time, but rather we're trying to support teachers to make really great judgments about how they might respond with their students. We know that as teachers all the time, we're getting information back about what students know and are able to do at any particular point in time. And what we want to do is to support you both to get the information you need to make a really great judgment about what to do next, but also provide you with some potential support that for when you notice that, say, your students need more scaffolding and support, that we just need to slow down a particular sequence, that we might need to break it into smaller chunks. We've tried to provide that support. At other times, we're trying to provide some extension. So your students, you may immediately recognize, gee, we've got this concept under control. So what's the next step for us? That doesn't necessarily move further through grade level or syllabus content, but rather increases that depth of understanding. So you'll find a range of different ways that's represented through the materials. We often provide more support than most classes would need, so more questions or rehearsal times or learning activities for a particular lesson, because we know that you'll make judicious choices based on your knowledge of your students. So now getting down to brass tacks, so we've talked a little bit in the first half of our session today about some of the general principles that underpin the materials that have been created for the New South Wales syllabus. And I'd like to just spend the back section of this presentation talking a little bit more about each of the specific subjects and phases that we've created materials for. And just a reminder that we'll be coming back to examine each of these subject areas in more detail in future webinars. So my starting point is in English. Early stage 1 and stage 1 materials, they provide support with reading and writing alongside an existing school phonics program. So you will find that those materials for early stage 1 and stage 1, they don't have word level reading and writing instruction and phonics instruction built into them, because we know that you already have access to a range of different high quality phonics programs. We provide lesson materials for 4 lessons per week for 8 weeks a term. So that gives around about 32 lessons per term. We know that there's some terms can fluctuate in terms of actual number of teaching days. So we've tried to provide some space over the course of the the term and the year for you to incorporate all of the other wonderful goings on at school. And you'll find that that's a feature of all of the materials and sequences that we'll talk about today. For early stage one and stage one, we provide two different sets of materials. So if you're using a phonics program that's quite a comprehensive program, so that's one that includes word level reading and writing, but might also look at working with big books, also handwriting or some of those other elements. So it's a chunkier type of program than a pure phonics program. You might choose to use the Express pathway. So the Express pathway, it's 40 minutes long. It includes a 10-minute daily review and a reading writing block of 30 minutes. And it's really designed to sit alongside a comprehensive phonics program. If you're using a phonics program that focuses really squarely on the reading of single words and the writing of single words or the just shorter texts, then you might choose to use our extended pathway. So our extended pathway has a 10-minute daily review, also has a reading and writing block of 50 minutes. So if you need that extra bit of instruction to sit alongside your phonics program, the extended pathway might be the one for you. We also provide some Year A-B composite materials for stage one. So if you've got a Year 1-2 class, then we've provided some support there for you to use in an A-B fashion. I've just popped up here an example of our yearly overview. It shows the lengths of the units that we're running in this case in kindergarten, but it's the same for early stage one and stage one. You'll notice that we prioritize the use of high quality texts. The units run for around about 2 weeks each, and we have a focus on a particular text type, a particular genre, and a particular knowledge topic. So by having a look at the yearly overview, you can get a quick glimpse about what units are available, what texts that we're going to be working with as mentor texts and reference texts over the course of each unit. We've tried to work with texts that are readily available and that you can find either in your school library or that are easily accessible. And in most cases, it's early stage one and stage one. You only need one copy of the text to teach the units. For stages 2 and 3, we're providing a bit more support. So support with vocabulary instruction, reading comprehension, syntax, grammar, handwriting, and sentence and text level writing. We're working with 5 2-hour lessons per week for 9 weeks a term. So we've got fuller weeks and more weeks in the term. And really the heart of those units at stages 2 and 3 is the reading of a whole text. So the units are really structured around a high quality text that we read together as a class, and we discuss and write about that text that we've just been reading. Just as with early stage one, or rather just stage one, we've got A-B composite materials that are available for stages 2 and 3. This is an example of the Year 4 yearly overview. You can see there's a range of different texts from Kensuke's Kingdom through to First Nations texts such as Uncle Xbox, some texts that are visual texts like The Arrival by Sean Tan. There's a real variety in texts over the course of a year, and we've given some suggested timings about where they might sit in a year. For those teaching in secondary, stages 4 and 5, we've developed term long units. Those units have 3 60-minute lessons per week for 9 weeks a term. And students read, discuss, and write, usually about whole texts. Now, there are some exceptions to that, like the one on the screen here, which is a Year 8 Term 1 unit that deals with sonnets and key speeches, where you have some text fragments. However, most of the time students will be studying longer texts. There's a real knowledge building element to those secondary units. So the sequence of teaching over the course of a term really starts with the development of background knowledge, and then working with the text, and then responding to the text in some way using their knowledge, related knowledge to the text, as well as their understanding of the text. Got an example of the Year 8, so stage 4B units. You can see that we've got some Shakespeare sonnets and key speeches, a great book, The Year the Maps Changed by Danielle Binks, which is a wonderful book. First Nations poetry, and then In My Blood It Runs, which is a film study at the end of term 4. For those interested in mathematics, we have our early stage 1 to stage 3, the primary maths materials that are available. They provide teacher handbooks, unit plans, daily review, slides, and student workbooks. We've got pretty extensive teacher guidance that sits within the unit plans for every one of the units that we've created. So within that unit plan, what we're trying to do is to take the knowledge and expertise that sits in the heads of the creators of those lessons and make it as explicit as possible. So that teacher guidance contains some of the ways that the learning in that particular unit connects to previous learning and future learning, and also what some of the choices have been around how concepts have been represented, the language that we use, all in consideration of the New South Wales syllabus. Those materials, although they're presented as slides, they're designed to be used alongside concrete materials, and you'll find frequent indications on the slide decks themselves that show where ideally you as the teacher would be representing and showing and working with concepts using concrete materials with students. The materials provide explicit teaching lessons alongside rich tasks and problem solving to help our students develop all aspects of working mathematically across early stage 1 to stage 3. We provide 4 60-minute lessons per week for 9 weeks a term, so that's 36 hours for each term from early stage 1 to stage 3. And we have some composite scope and sequences available for stages 1, 2, and 3 for those people who are working with mixed age classes. Again, we've got our yearly overview here. You can see that we've got a series of units. We've scheduled them in a suggested sequence. Some of these units can be reordered and remixed across the course of the year based on your knowledge of your students. We provide some guidance about what units have to be taught before other units, because as we know in mathematics, it's relentlessly hierarchical. So we've got to make sure that the order of the units is important and considered whenever we're adjusting where a unit might sit. For those teaching in secondary stages 4 and 5, you can find units available now that provide the same types of materials as we discussed for early stage 1 to stage 3. Again, they're designed to be used alongside concrete materials. We also have opportunities for students to use digital tools to support their learning. There's a heavy emphasis on rich tasks and problem solving, so most lessons will feature problem solving activities and opportunities. We schedule 3 60-minute lessons per week for 9 weeks a term. For those who are teaching in stage 5, we provide some flexibility in path provision. So we provide a range of different units from core through to extension and advanced, and some suggestions of ways in which you might be able to arrange those units. So, for example, this is a sample year 9 syllabus core and selected paths. So we've selected some units that schools might like to put together into a nice curriculum for stage 5A. We provide some tools that you can use, some digital tools you can use to be able to reorder those units, just to make sure that you've got the balance and timing right for your school. For those heading into science and technology, early stage 1 to stage 3, the early stage 1 to stage 3 units are available now. They provide a teacher handbook, slides, student workbooks. We provide some syllabus specific units that are spread over the course of the stage, but we also provide some optional units. So looking at the syllabus, it has such fabulous content. We also feel that there's an opportunity to be able to supplement that syllabus material with optional units. We know that some schools have got the opportunity to provide more instructional time in science and technology than is necessary just to cover the syllabus. So for those schools that are looking for options, things that they might like to slide into their teaching sequence, we've provided some optional units where students can practice their science inquiry, their data analysis and scientific writing skills in other interesting topics. We provide 1 60-minute lesson per week for 9 weeks, and we're just developing some of our technology units for use in 2027. Here's an example of a Stage 3A syllabus yearly overview. On this particular yearly overview, you can see those additional optional units. They're marked with an asterisk. So in Term 4, we've got 2 units, making shadows and manipulating light. Those are some optional units that you might choose to use with your students. We think they connect some of the earlier concepts about light really nicely with some of the learning that students do in Stage 4 and Stage 5. So if you're looking to expand your science and technology offerings, then perhaps some of those optional units are for you. If you're teaching in secondary stages 4 and 5, we've got Stage 4 units that are available right now. We've got Stage 5 units becoming progressively available across the end of 2026 this year and the start of 2027. And again, we provide a small number of optional units for those schools who would like to do a little bit more learning in preparation for some of their work a little bit later on in their senior secondary studies. Again, we're providing 3 60-minute lessons per week for 9 weeks a term. So that's 27 hours of lesson materials per term per year level. Now I've got there a yearly overview of Stage 4A that's got some of the units that we're working with. You can see the optional unit of sustainable use in Term 4, just providing some background information about recycling and reusing materials in a sustainable fashion in amongst all of the statutory content from the New South Wales syllabus. The last of the areas that I'll introduce today is the set of HSIE materials. So for early Stage 1 and the Stage 1 materials, they are available now. We have teacher handbooks, slides, student workbooks. They're all available for you to use. The optional units provide additional opportunities. Again, we've found a little bit of space in the curriculum provision to add in a couple of other units if you choose to use them. We've programmed in 1 60-minute lesson per week for 8 weeks a term. Here's the Stage 1B or the Year 3 map. You can see technological developments, some of the elements around representing places, connections to country, myths and artifacts, and then we've got a really nice unit about Otzi the Iceman and how students can leverage some of their historical inquiry skills to have a look at the find of Otzi the Iceman if that's something that your school would like to do. For Stages 2 and 3, the materials are also available. It's worth mentioning that we provide 2 different pathways in a similar fashion to the primary English materials. We've got a core pathway, which is 8 60-minute lessons per term. And then we've got what we call Core Plus. For those schools who've got a little bit more instructional time, we provide 12 60-minute lessons per term. So that's an extra 4 lessons across the course of each of the terms. And those optional lessons or optional units provide just some more opportunities to work with some of the concepts and ideas. Sometimes they are brand new units. Sometimes they are additional lessons that just dive more deeply into some of the rich content, knowledge and skills that are represented in the New South Wales syllabus. So you can choose to use the core pathway, which will satisfy the requirements of the New South Wales syllabus, or if you've got more instructional time, you might choose from some of those optional units to supplement your program. This is a Stage 3A Core Plus. So this is an example of where we have more lessons available over the course of a week. You can see the statutory content in Australia in the 1800s and changing communities. And then we've got some of these additional units like predicting the weather and medieval Europe that you might choose to use with your students. We think that they are exciting additions, but totally up to you and your school. Just in terms of the syllabus materials that are available for teaching, a bit of a reminder, I showed this slide at the start, but for those people who have joined us a little bit later, we've got most of the English completed from early Stage 1 through to Stage 4, with just that Stage 5 resources being developed now. We've got all of mathematics available with the last lessons, Term 4 materials going up a little bit later on this year. Science materials are available for early Stage 1 to Stage 4, with Stage 5 coming over the back end of this year, and HSIE materials are available for primary. and we've just started development for secondary history and geography for stage 4 and then stage 5 for 2028. So it's all very exciting. To finish off with, going back to this concept of curriculum coherence, one of the foundational elements of the Ochre units is, first of all, that it's aligned with the syllabus, but also that we've thought really carefully about how units are aligned. So this is the screen snip that I've got here that's quite colourful. Each of those little blobs or squares on your screen is one of our units, and then each of the lines that exist between them is a link that exists between one unit and another. And here you can see the combined map for mathematics, science, HSIE, and English, and the links and dependencies that exist between each of those units. As you can see, the team spent a significant amount of time thinking carefully about what those links are. We think that our materials emphasise those links between subject areas across multiple year levels, and it reflects the cross-disciplinary intent of the syllabus, that there are these cross-subject links that exist within the syllabus. And we think there's a real benefit to schools who choose to use Ochre materials in multiple subject areas because you can benefit from those carefully created links. However, for those schools that are just choosing to use Ochre materials in a particular subject area, we've always provided scaffolding support in areas where we're making assumptions about students' access to particular knowledge and skills from other subject areas. So you won't lose out if you're just choosing to use Ochre mathematics, then you won't be losing out from the fact that you're not also doing the Ochre science units and vice versa. This is a slightly closer up image of that map. If you head on to the Ochre website, in our blog section, you can find a blog post that provides a link to the Australian curriculum version of this map that you can navigate around. It might be interesting for you and your teams. Well, folks, we've come to the end of our time together. We've got a couple of minutes left. Thanks so much for making the time to spend 45 minutes with us here at the Ochre team. You can find out more about Ochre Education through some of our socials, which I've got on the screen there, by visiting our website. And just a note that Ochre Education, we also work with impact assessment, which provides assessment tasks and an assessment platform that's aligned with the Ochre curriculum, and our professional learning partners, Teachwell, who provide professional learning in instructional strategies and routines, as well as curriculum development that's both in person and remotely. So if you're looking to engage with us here at Ochre Education or impact assessment or Teachwell, please don't hesitate to contact us. Probably the place to go would be at ochre.org.au. Last thing from me before I stop sharing the screen and maybe see if there's any questions that people might have. We will be going through each of the subject areas that I've discussed today in greater depth in future webinars. So if you've got a particular interest in a particular subject and we haven't covered it in the depth that you are hoping for today, don't worry, we've got a webinar coming up in the back end of this term that might give you the information that you need.
Well, Reid, I think it'll come as no surprise to you that a few of the questions have been around composite grades and small schools in particular, and we know that's a big area of challenge. Lots of people being appreciative of you sharing your knowledge and time today, but I think I've answered most of the questions that are there about composites.
Fabulous. Well, we're very aware of the amazing work that teachers who are teaching in small and tiny schools do, and anybody who's working in composite multi-age classrooms, particularly those that fit across multiple stages. We know it's a really tricky thing to be able to plan for and work with students who are at a range of different levels. And so we're always thinking and learning in that space. So we're doing our best to create materials that can support you and your work. And we've got a heap of people in our Ochre team who work in very small schools who've used whole class teaching aligned to the New South Wales syllabus with their students over the last 4 or 5 years. And so they've got some things, I think, to share in terms of how the curriculum materials can be used, and also some advice for those people who might have them. But I'm sure, Sue, you would have done a fine job in helping and supporting and answering people's questions in the chat. All right, folks. Happy we'll be sitting here for a couple of minutes afterwards. So if you want to pop any last questions into the chat, otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic day. We'll make a recording available to all those who registered. We'll send out a copy of the recording. We'll also place it on our YouTube channel with links on our website. Watch out on socials for the next set of webinars that are very subject specific. If you've got any particular things that you want to know for any of the particular courses that we offer materials for, you can pop them in the chat here so that we can add it to our planning, or you can send it to us directly either through commenting on socials or through contact@ochre.org.au, which is our contact email address. Thanks so much, everybody. It's been wonderful to see you. I hope you have a fantastic and safe evening and rest of the week.